Thank you so much for joining us today for the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. Here on the Pastor's Potluck, it's similar to a normal potluck where you might get something that you want and there may be something that you just want to pass up altogether. And that's okay. There's something here for everybody. Our goal here is to encourage you and maybe in the process entertain you. If you're ready, let's dig in. We just want to run it by you one more time. Are you really ready to dig into what we're talking about today?
Are you ready to say what you were just saying?
Delusional right now. That's what I am. I'm like running on I feel
We're
like
past fumes.
yes.
Right?
Yeah. I'm past fumes on like the cheapest gas. Like not even stuff that you can like buy at a gas station.
Yeah.
Like this is your buddy
Have
down
you-
the street. He came into some gas.
Have
And-
you ever heard of Toastmasters?
Toastmasters.
Yes. Toastmasters. It's a club organization to help people with like public speaking, leadership, whatever.
Are you trying to
Our
say
fumes.
something?
No. No, I wasn't. But no, I just realized how bad that was. I was listening to some of their winners and one of the speakers like talked about how she ran out of gas and she had to go, like her friend's dad told them to go to the gas station and get a gas can and
Yeah.
all that. And they bought it, went back to the car, and they tried to put gas in the car, try to start the car, it still doesn't start. And they're like, "Did you put gas in this can?" And she's like, "Was I supposed to?" And she's like, "It's empty." And she said, "Well, I thought that's why they called it gas." Like,
Oh Lord.
they were young when it happened. Anyway, that's what this conversation just reminded me of because it's like we're past empty.
Yeah.
and Just barely.
It's
hang
good
on.
though.
Yes. It's the best kind of empty.
Yeah. And
Right?
so we are talking in regards to the months leading up to it's pretty much Christmas. We got like a little bit of a breather and then building up to Easter with everything behind the scenes. But goodness gracious, it was such an incredible Holy Week experience that we had. If you go from Sunday to Sunday experience, wrapping up a sermon series that has been super impactful in everyone's lives. And then we're doing the Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, and then all of our Easter services that we had. Just absolutely incredible. What was some of your favorite moments maybe through that Holy Week that us as a
man.
church, that we experienced?
Yeah. I think the moment for me was Good Friday. I was helping out on the back camera, and there was a moment, I'll get emotional again, but when people were just taking up their cards to nail on the cross the things, whether it was they wanted to commit their life to Christ fully or they wanted freed from something, and just seeing it like nail after nail, person after person, parents with their kids going up. That was just a moment that because from back there, I could see, we did different colored cards, so I could see how many cards were up there for committing their life to Christ and just doing that. And I was like, man, this is a great moment.
Yeah, the sound, just the sound of
Yeah.
the hammer hitting nails,
Mhm.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like I'm tired and I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm doing something that is showing physically that I'm ready for a change.
Yes.
It was just absolutely powerful moment. I think for me was it's on Easter, so obviously it was like on a professional side. It was awesome to have that many people singing with us, like in our praise choir.
Yeah.
But just the testimony video.
Oh yeah.
Whenever you come across people that have similar life stories as you, it gets you excited because Jesus is still working in people's lives, but then also there's just like a deep connection, like I know like the struggles even to this day that still that you're thrown with temptation. And so and still being an overcomer in those situations is just an amazing feeling. There's a lot of times that it's just you can just feel the devil just trying to sneak an idea or a thought in your mind. Hey, nobody's around. Nobody's going to see this. You're not going to get caught doing this. Yeah. But just being able to say, even in those moments to where I know that nobody would ever find out about it, like that's not the life that I choose. The life that I choose is to, even in the times whenever nobody sees it, is to still honor God.
Yeah.
And seeing that happen in other people's lives is they're making a decision that even though in the little things, in the times whenever nobody is watching and nobody would ever find out, I am still going to choose to honor God because it's real easy to do that in front of other people.
Oh, yeah.
The hard part is coming and making that decision and saying, in these moments, I choose Jesus.
Absolutely. No, I think even just, it was before Holy Week, obviously, but when we got to go and just record their stories, because we had to take it down to what everybody else saw on Sunday, but like knowing the fullness of it. And because it's not often that you get to sit down and like hear somebody's full story, it takes time. And like usually when people like ask me what's my story, I'm like, how much time you got? You got a couple hours? You got a few hours? Like,
how do I condense down
and then
40
it's even
years?
like, it's even after the fact, after people know like the big things, like filling in some of the details, they're like, man, wow. Like, but it's one of those, like when you hear the fullness of it, like all of us were pretty emotional during the recording.
Yeah.
And then even still seeing it on Sunday, it was like, I got all emotional again because I'm like, man, there's just so much. And I love it because no matter how bad, whether it's your decisions or the life handed to you, the things done to you, like that end up causing you to go a certain way, or like whatever you've chosen up until that certain point, it doesn't matter. Like no matter what, once you get to that point where God gets a hold of you and you finally surrender, amazing things happen.
Yeah.
No matter how bad, how distraught, how traumatic, how whatever, like that God can change that. And so that's just for me with that video that hits home, is that no matter what, like when you finally get to that place where it's like, okay, here you go, God.
Yeah.
Like I'm here, I'm willing, whether it's I'm willing to read my Bible, I'm willing to go to church, I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to worship. Like when you get to that place, God can take that little bit that you have to offer and totally transform it. So.
Yeah. So on Good Friday, it wasn't a really good spot to kind of mention this in our worship service, because I usually, I pray sometimes, or I'll share a little something or a scripture or something, and I just didn't feel like released from the Holy Spirit to be able to share that. I did a little bit on Sunday, but on Easter, but on Good Friday, it had actually been 9 years that I've been sober, and so I mentioned it a little bit, but that whole nailing the cross thing, it just kind of like. I just remember my first couple of days, like after that, like saying, I just want to be done with this. I want to be done with addiction, and I was just, I just remember being in that mindset of like, no more, like I'm giving this to Jesus. And so like, I knew what people were going through, like on that level. So it was really cool.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see people on Easter as well, like, saying like, Lord, I'm hitting, we needed this reset. Like it's happening. We're hitting the button.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk about kind of like what's next for maybe people that are listening to this, and like, what are their next steps? Like, what can they look forward to? What are some things that we want to like walk them through? Like, what are their next steps?
Yeah.
Like, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for those who maybe accepted Christ, committed their life to Christ, and said, I want to become new, for those people, really, it's going to be a couple different things. One is baptism is typically the next step,
Hmm.
to kind of share that publicly with everyone else. Hey, I committed my life to Christ. I'm a new creation, and I want to try to live this life in the new life going forward. That is the next step. And so we have src.life. You can go there and find that typical next step and fill out the form to be able to do that with us. But the other thing is to really get in community,
Yeah.
because without community, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. When you make a commitment like that, whether it is salvation to become a new creation, or I want to be freed from this thing, it's a lot harder to do on your own.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we have God, we have Christ, we have the Holy Spirit within us, but He places people to be with us as well. Like in the very beginning, the only thing that wasn't good was man being alone, right?
Yep.
He needed a helper. He needed someone to be there with him, to help him, to be in community with him. And so it's very important from the very beginning of creation to now to get in community with like-minded people, people who can help you with your growth, to help you understand scripture. You know, we heard from Jacob as he shared, like, I read the Bible, but I wasn't really understanding what I was reading. Like, I read it so fast, I didn't retain it, I didn't understand it fully. But now that I'm, hearing it taught, and now that I am going through again, I'm seeing it in a new way. And that's so important, because you can read it all you want,
Yeah.
but like, until you're with somebody, to be able to, like, a group of people or an individual who can walk along that path with you and say, hey, what does this scripture here mean? I don't quite fully understand it, or I'm troubled by this. Like, to have somebody walk through that with you is going to help your growth immensely. A big way that we do that here is groups.
Yeah.
We're kind of in the middle of groups right now, but there are plenty of groups still that you can jump right into
Yeah.
still, that are going to be meeting through mid-May. There are other individuals who would be more than welcome to answer your questions and help walk through things with you. Like, maybe you hit that reset button for marriage. We have marriage counseling
Yep.
available for those who attend. Maybe it is within your relationship, and you needed to kind of get things right. You need to get married now. Like, we have the premarital counseling to go through and that kind of thing. There are so many things available and offered, but the biggest thing would be baptism and community of
Yeah.
some kind. It doesn't have to be within one of our groups, but finding someone to do life with, to walk with, to have those questions with, even if it's just going to lunch every week after church with someone
Yep.
to talk about what was taught. Like, because we hear from Aaliyah, who's like, I didn't understand what Scott was saying at first. Like, I was just there for the music. I couldn't understand. I couldn't comprehend. Like, having someone to sit down with you after the fact and say, hey, what did he mean here? Like, he said this, but what did he mean? Like, what's that mean for me?
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah. It's growing up in church. It's you kind of get like privy to like how we talk in the church and how
Mm-hmm.
things are presented, but the coming to the realization that not everybody has grown up in church
Mm-hmm.
and is suddenly in this. I mean, we have our. It's like a different lingo.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It definitely is.
and so just being able to explain and walk through those things,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean,
Yeah.
can you go find somebody that has never stepped foot in church and try and just say, hey, when's the last time you've heard anywhere new creation?
Or,
And just
yeah.
like all these things that we talk about
Yeah.
that is theologically
Mm-hmm.
right. It's just they've never heard it before,
Yes.
and so it's like, what do you mean? What has to happen?
Yeah.
You
Like,
know,
it takes me back to that.
born again.
Yeah.
You know,
What was it? Nicodemus that came to Jesus in the night, and he's like, what do you mean? Am I supposed to enter back into my mother's womb?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of that process that we take for granted a lot when we do grow up in church, like that, people understand what we mean by this. Like, even when we take communion, like people, like we take for granted that people understand and know what those elements mean, and they don't always, like, or we talk about the blood, like, sacrifice and Jesus, and they're like, whoa, hold up, what is this? Like, it's weird for people who don't grow up in that.
Where's that reset button?
And we think, but
again,
we think that, like,
we need to start over.
But we think that just because we're in America, that people have heard it.
Yeah.
And that's not true.
No.
Not at all. I mean, I can still tell you, like, that I've met people that are like, I've never been to church in my life.
Yeah.
I've never heard about Jesus. I don't know how to even look up a scripture. Like, you're telling me to go read my Bible. What do I read? Do I start in the beginning? Do I start whatever? And typically, like, we would say, like, don't necessarily start from the beginning. Start with Jesus. Like, start with Jesus. And there are 4 books of the Bible that kind of start and tell us about him and his life and what he did, because we're to become Christ-like, and you can't do that if you don't know Christ. But then, starting there and having that understanding, then you're going to be able to see Jesus throughout the rest of Scripture a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But the worst thing you can do is to not have other believers around you.
Yep.
When you're in the beginning, whether it's the beginning of letting go of anger or addiction or whatever, because the more that you're alone, the easier it is to be like, nobody's going to see, nobody's going to know. But when you're walking side by side with somebody who truly knows you, they're going to recognize when you're not quite yourself. Like, and you need a safe space to say, like, hey, like, I'm not doing too great right now. Like, I've struggled with anger and I thought I was doing better, but now, like, I feel like I'm struggling all over again. Like, you need a safe space to be able to share those things.
Yeah.
I mean, we read through those cards this morning of what people need freed from. I mean, there's lust, there's anger, there's bitterness, there's unforgiveness, there's fear, there's anxiety, there's pornography on one of them. Like, there are so many things that people need freed from. And if you don't have that person that you can safely go to, that is going to, come to you with love, like, not judge you and be like, oh, well, you're not doing good, you're out. Like, but they would come to you with love and say, well, hey, how can I help you walk through this and turn things around? Like, how can I do that for you? How can, like, whether it's checking in every day, every night, like, because I think that there are also people that I think of our widows and widowers within the church, that it's those times at night and in the silence that it's hard for them. Like, some of them it's morning, some of it's evening. So checking in with them in those times, it's still not going to replace that quiet necessarily, but it'll let them know that somebody's thinking of them and that they're actually not alone. Yeah. I think it's important. So.
Yeah. That's such a great next step, baptism and then community, and and it's important. Like, it's not just something that we just say, like, oh, we want to bump up our numbers. No, we're not worried about how many people are coming. We're worried about people being discipled to begin to live this life that mimics Jesus and who he is and who he was to everyone around him. It's who we're called to be, is to be a follower of Jesus. If, people that followed other people throughout history, they began to look like that person that they were following. And so we just want to be known as Christ followers, as Jesus followers. So
and to be able to share that with those people around us is incredibly important aspect of it, because that's what we're supposed to be, the image bearers of God, like, in the world. That is our purpose. And until you're doing that, you're going to continue to chase things or look to other things for that fullness, that fulfillment that maybe you desire. I've known lots of people who are like, I'm really successful, like, in business. Like, I've been successful. I've done a lot of really great things, but I still don't feel fulfilled. And it's because they haven't fully, like, understood where that fulfillment comes from.
Yeah. what's next on the horizon for us here at Southridge now that
Yeah.
Easter's? I mean, it seems like our next big service would be Mother's Day, and that's
Mhm.
like a month away. But um,
Close.
it's then after
Yeah.
Mother's Day, it's like okay, well, then we got all this time until
Yeah.
Thanksgiving and
Yeah.
Christmas.
Well,
So
there are camps. There are summer camps for teens and kids, which are incredibly important for their growth, their journey. That helps them get in community. So if you have kids or teens, like really look out there on src.life for those things, check those things out. But even throughout the summer, like taking that time to yourself or as a family to get in the Word, like rest in who God is and who He's called you to be, and really take that time. This is the biggest thing that I did during sabbatical was like just spend a lot of time of who God is calling me to be
yeah,
in my position here at the church, in my position in my family, like who God's calling me to be, what His purpose for me is. Like take some time for that, so that way when you start in the fall with going back to school or getting back in the rhythm of that kind of things and gearing up for the holidays again, you come into that season with a purpose and an identity in mind that's going to help carry you through that, because it's really easy to get carried away in that busyness of Christmas. That's what I would say for individuals and families. But for us as a church, I know that we're going to have some challenges for some things coming up for paying off some debt, doing some of that stuff, which will require some sacrifice on our end. But the identity and purpose for us individually will also help play into that,
yeah,
because when you know what your role is and what your job is to really go after the right things, then you're going to be able to prioritize your budget in that kind of way and do those kind of things as well. But in the fall and into the next year, I know something that within groups and group leaders, which is where the bulk of our discipleship happens for adults and teens, is we've been going through emotionally healthy discipleship as a staff. I plan to do that with group leaders
yeah,
because it's a book from Pete Scazzero. So if you want to go through that during the summer, go for it. It has radically changed a lot of our views personally and as a staff, I believe, but helping people to just go a little deeper in their
yeah,
faith. Like, because what we see often is after Easter, people like all excited from whatever, and it's more of an emotional thing, but it's not a deep thing.
hmm
And so it's kind of shallow on the surface level of things, where they're like, okay, well, I'm going to do all these surface level things, but it doesn't go deeper, get to the root of things, and like really plant yourself well. And
yeah,
so we're wanting to do some things to kind of help with that in the fall. I know in the fall we're wanting to help offer some different ways that people can respond through prayer at the end of our services, because there's not a one size fits all. Like, not everybody wants to go to an altar to pray, but they might want to do a nailing to the cross type of thing. They
yeah,
might want to be able to take communion and remember the sacrifice that Jesus made for them.
yeah,
They might need someone else to pray for them, over them in that moment. Like, so offering some of those moments to be able to allow people to respond in the way that they are feeling they need in that moment, in that day, in that season of life, is going to be really important for us going forward, because when you make that movement and that motion, I think that's what was so powerful for me on Good Friday. Is from my vantage point, I could see the line of all the people,
yeah,
and it's not often that you see responses where people are moving. Like, you
hmm
can pray in your seat, that is fine, but often we need some kind of action. Like,
yeah,
that action helps solidify it for us, I think,
yeah,
as individuals. Like, when I actually move from the seat, from my comfort, and I go and do whatever in front of people, behind, but like whatever, if I get out of my seat in my comfort, I am more apt to remember that and not just walk out of here like nothing happened.
yeah. The whole drive home, you're like, man, I walked up there and I nailed something to that cross.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you think about.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's real easy just to kind of filter in, sit down, kind of be like, I'm just taking all this
Mhm.
in, and I checked my box off
Yeah.
because, my attendance record is perfect. And then I get
Yeah.
out, and then nothing
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah,
I mean,
but, like, if
it's
you
real
get up
easy
and
to fall
move
into
in
that
some way,
habit.
like, even if the person with you doesn't do that, they saw you do that.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
that helps with that community and that accountability and that,
Yeah.
like, whatever. Like, my husband went up, like, he came down off the camera stand and went up, and I was sitting there like, "Oh, man, maybe I should have done that," because I'm just sitting there like, I can't move from this spot. But then I'm like, I could have, absolutely. But even that, like, that was a conversation for us heading home. Like,
Yeah.
hey, like, you did that. What'd you put on there? To be able to be that helper to help keep him accountable in those things or to help him along in those things. I think just remembering like that often that action helps solidify some things for us.
It just goes back to that community.
Mhm.
Like, if you're plugged into a community in one of our groups, it's real easy to have conversations, not because we're nosy people.
Right.
It's because we genuinely want the absolute best for people
Yeah.
in their faith journey.
Yes.
It's like you are setting people up for success in their journey.
Mhm.
And that accountability is just one of the ways that you set people up for success.
Yeah.
At first, it does feel uncomfortable because you don't feel like
Yeah.
people care, but people do care.
Mhm.
And you're like, well, my problem's not that, it's insignificant. No,
Oh
it's
my
not.
gosh,
Like, we
yes.
care, like, because
Yeah.
we,
That's
I
the
mean,
thing
have
that
you been in that
Yes.
situation yourself?
That's the thing that's like a pet peeve of mine a little bit, like where somebody will be like, well, I haven't had like all that you've had to, and I'm like, no, like whatever you're dealing with is just as important.
Yes.
Like it's just as important. And when we continue to minimize, like, well, like it's not that big of a thing, or like, you've lost this person and this person and this person, and I've only lost my mom. Like you can't minimize those things. Like
No.
you can't compare them because for each individual, it's big. Like, and God cares about the little things too. Like
Yep.
we forget that often.
Yep.
Like we want to go to him about these big, huge things, but like it's the little things too.
Yeah.
And he cares about those just as much. And every individual, whether they've had a great life or a rough life or what, everything in between, like their story matters.
Yep.
It matters. Your struggle matters. Whatever it is, it matters.
Yeah.
And so don't diminish things. Don't belittle things. Like don't try to one up people either. That's another pet peeve. Well, you just dealt with addiction. Well, I dealt with this and trauma and abuse and like what, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's just stop it. Like
Yeah.
it all, okay. We won't go in that.
Well, we got
anymore,
we got a pretty exciting event also, like what's
Oh.
happening for us here at Southridge as well is like another way to kind of like fill in the gap for people that have that are going through some things, and that's our Beauty Day event,
Yes.
which is a powerful and exciting event because you'll never understand, I think, true joy until you have been able to walk alongside with someone that is going through something that has literally lost everything.
Yeah.
Because these ladies that are in Recovery Point, they have to cut off a lot of communication
Yes.
from friends and family.
I mean, many
A
of them.
lot of them just show up with the shirt
Yeah.
and the pants and
Like
the
some
shoes
are
that
coming
they have.
from prison. They have fines. They have lost rights to kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they burned so many bridges at that point.
Yep.
And they sit in there. Like I've sat back in the classes with some of the ladies who come regularly, and they're just like, "Why do y'all love me? Like you say you love me, but like you don't even know me. How can you love me?" And
Yep.
it's just like, man, because we are made by God and we have his image within us and he loves us. And so like we are able to love you right where you're at no matter
Yeah.
what. But man, I'm so excited. I talked to our speaker for that day yesterday and I was just so pumped about it.
Yeah, it's such a
It was
great.
so good.
It's because we have an opportunity. We share the gospel with them. We have a like powerful worship, which is fantastic. But alongside of that is they get to go through. They get to get their hair cut and styled. They get makeup and their
Nails.
nails done.
Yeah.
They get to go
Clothes
through and pick clothes
that actually fit.
that fit and that are really, really, really nice. They're not tattered and beaten up. You know, they get a goodie bag full of all kinds of products, and it is just incredible just seeing, you know, because initially, whenever you present this idea, whenever we're talking through this with them, they kind of have an idea, but there's a little bit of skepticism. They're just like, okay, like they don't quite understand because they've never been through anything like this before.
Yeah.
And so they get through, and so, you know, we separate them out in groups because we don't want to overload stations or anything like that. And so they go through the first station, and so there's a little bit of like this timidity. Is that a word?
Yeah. We'll make it one. I think so.
I'm so tired. But anyways, so they get to go through this, and they get their hair done, and then you start to see the excitement. And then the girls, you know, they're coming through with their bag of clothes, and you see them start to move about to the different stations.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, by the end of the day, the smiles on these women's faces is just absolutely incredible to see.
Yeah.
And at each point through that, the people that are doing the hair, the nails, they're just pouring into these women.
Yeah.
And they are, it's kind of like, I don't know, I don't have an analogy.
Yeah.
The only way to be able to experience this and to really see the impact that the church is having and the individuals that have donated so much of their time and their resources into all these things that we're giving them is to experience it.
Yeah.
I kind of liken it to like Christmas morning, you know, for like small kids growing up. Like they're like
there's anticipation.
There's anticipation, like
maybe a little anxiety. Like, am I going to get what I want under the? But then it's just joy.
Yeah,
just
it
joy.
is amazing. So how can people get involved with this?
Yeah.
Talk about some of the things that we're looking to like that we're kind of wanting to see given and donated, where they can sign up to volunteer to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Because it's just a fantastic outreach.
Yeah. So src.life/beauty day, or if you just go to src.life, you'll see it as one of the cards on there. It's one of the first few that are on there. And that takes you to the page that shows you everything. We obviously, volunteers are huge, and it's not just for those who attend our church, it's for the community as well, because we don't have 25 people who can cut hair within our church, but you have somebody that cuts your hair, asking the person that does that, like, hey, would you want to come and spend your Saturday evening with us to volunteer some time and cut some ladies' hair who go a year or more and they don't get to get their hair cut? Because that's the thing. Like, that's the reality, is that while they're at the center, they don't get to get their hair cut. They don't until they're in the final phase. They can't wear makeup. They can't wear jewelry. Like, there are so many things. Like, I couldn't imagine going through a day and not having a hair tie. That's one of the items on the list, is to donate hair ties. So we get them a backpack, and we get everything that they need, from hygiene products to umbrellas and sunglasses, because they have to, what they call trudge. They have to walk every day, rain or shine. And so, like, sunscreen, sunglasses, umbrellas for those times, for that, are so important. So there's a full list on there. We haven't completed any items, so anything on there is game to bring in. You can donate your money. And if you don't want to shop, we say $80 all in. We'll provide everything needed for a lady. We're about to drop our t-shirts. You can order a t-shirt until they're gone. It's buy one, get one free, $20. So it's
buy one, give
one.
So you
buy one,
you
give
buy a
one.
shirt,
Yes.
and then it gives one of the Recovery Point ladies.
Yes. So it's $20. It gives you a shirt, and it provides a shirt for one of the ladies at Recovery Point. That's a big deal, because I don't know where you can buy a shirt for $20 that you also are able to give one. That's kind of why I like Tom's. I like to buy Tom's because I get a pair, but they also give a pair. So,
Yeah.
And I just also like the shoes. But so you can donate, you can shop for the items, you can sign up to serve, you can buy a t-shirt. Everything's right there on src.life. There are also some things that don't cost money, like tennis shoes. Like if you have gently worn shoes that you're like, you know what, I can give these away. Like maybe you have a 1 in, 1 out rule in your closet. And so you've recently bought a pair of shoes and you haven't taken in a pair out. You can pull those out to donate. Handbags, things like that are on a list too.
Yeah.
If you go there to see those type of items that you could bring in for them to kind of shop from their
Have we ever
clothing
reached
boutique.
out to Tom's? Because our Recovery Warriors, that's through Southridge, it's its own nonprofit. It's its own 501c3. So I wonder if we would be able to even receive those.
I don't know. So I think
Sorry,
they sent them to
I
Africa
talk
or
out
somewhere.
loud whenever I have like ideas that pop in.
I know. That's a great question. But yeah, so
I didn't mean to put you on the spot either.
it's okay.
I mean, I typically do that anyways.
I know.
I mean, what are we like on episode 80? And I think everybody's been put on the spot because that's just how I roll.
We do that. But we're partnering with an organization called Community Bridge this year. They're going to provide all the clothes for the clothing boutique, which is awesome. And they're a group in St. Albans to where, like, if you know foster families, if you know people who may need things regularly, you can partner. You can send them to there, and they have a great foster closet. It's just a great nonprofit that started really around the time of COVID, I want to say, and they've just expanded beyond what they could even fit. But it's just a cool thing to be able to partner with them this year. But
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to Mystery Meat.
What?
I've been sitting here waiting the whole time. Listen, you know, my husband, he has been really into like artificial intelligence stuff lately, and he's like, I'm going to ask the AI for some Mystery Meat questions. And I was like, that's a great idea. Once you do that, type them up, print them out, and put them in here. Because we're getting low on our questions. So, you know. Oh, God.
What is it that you keep wanting to smell despite the fact that it doesn't smell particularly good?
Well, if I like the smell, then, well, I mean, not everybody necessarily likes that. I love the smell
It's
after
not particularly good, but you're just so intrigued by the smell. You're like, I can't stop. Like, what is wrong with me?
Why don't you answer first? I mean,
dude, okay, so mine is whenever like somebody hits a skunk on the side of the road and it fills up your car and you're just like, I hate this right now. I can't stop doing this. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me?
like, well, you smell occasionally to see if the smell's gone too, but like, yeah.
Like for me, like it's not particularly good, but I'm
No.
super intrigued that God created something to smell as bad as a skunk. And so I'm like, how can I find beauty in this?
Well, we have different outlooks on things.
What's wrong with me? I can't stop
mean,
smelling.
Like, I like the smell of gasoline.
Yeah.
I love
can
the
do that.
smell after you like blow out a candle.
Yeah,
or a match.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some
What about
people really
that?
don't like
What
that.
about, you remember those old smelly markers whenever you were
yeah.
growing up? Like the black one
Oh,
always
so-
like smelled like death.
listen.
It was like licorice.
Here's
but you
one
know
for
what
you.
death smells
Here's
like
one for
because
you.
of the licorice marker.
When I would teach kids, there was a week during Wednesdays we did something a little different, and so we used a different kind of curriculum. And there was one week that like we were talking about sin and like good and evil and like, you know, good things and bad things. And I had to get smelly stickers.
Yeah.
I had to get ones that were like smelled good, and then I had to get ones that smelled bad. And I found ones that smelled like old grandma, and ones that smelled like garbage and like whatever. I couldn't stop smelling those things. Like, I thought they were the best things ever. I was like, this is so amazing. How did they get the smell in a sticker?
Yeah.
A scratch and sniff sticker for kids. Like the old grandma one was the best. It just had that like musty, like
mothball smell.
Maybe, yeah. And the garbage. I think there was like a fish one, like a dead fish one.
No, I don't.
But listen.
I'd rather smell skunk.
So the bad smelling ones, like we put on our papers to represent sin.
Yeah.
Like, and then the good smelling were to represent the good things, or like the fruit of the spirit, or something. I don't remember exactly. It was a while ago, but it was. I don't know what happened to all those stickers. I think we probably ended up throwing them away. But they were like.
See, we're spending too much time smelling grandmas.
That sounds really weird if you put it that way.
That's what I'm saying. I know, but you were so intrigued by grandma sticker. Hey, we really appreciate you all. Thank you so much for listening. If you're wanting to take those next steps in your faith journey, src.life is the place to go. Put it in a web browser and we'll get in contact with you. If you want to be water baptized, if you want to join a group. I know you hate that. Stop.
We don't do any other baptism here, just so you know.
It's good to clarify that type of baptism sometimes. Love you. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you so much for listening in with us today. We really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and you can also watch the video version of this on YouTube as well. All you have to do is search up the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. From all of us here, we want to say thank you, and we'll see you next week.